Hello, and thank you for joining us on this webinar to discuss the continuous improvement planning process for the 2025-2026 school year. My name is Ruth Swanson, and I'm the Program Manager for District 180, which is the school improvement branch at the Kentucky Department of Education. With me today are Veronica Bowler and Trey Smallwood, who are both program consultants in our branch. Though we truly believe that Kentucky's improvement planning process supports both best practice and compliance, our session today will be heavy on the compliance aspects. So we want to be sure that you come away with an understanding of what is required. We'll look at the revisions to the needs assessment diagnostic and focus in on how that process should inform the rest of your improvement plan and each of the components. We also will spend a lot of time on the revised goal building templates. And then we'll end with some tips for navigating the continuous improvement platform that houses the components of the improvement plan, which we call diagnostics. Trey is going to share an overview of the planning process.
The Kentucky regulation for improvement planning is listed on the screen, 703 KAR 5225. This is the regulation that governs Kentucky's continuous improvement planning process for districts and schools. It defines what the Comprehensive District Improvement Plan, or CDIP, is, and what the Comprehensive School Improvement Plan is, or CSIP. The regulation outlines the reporting timeline, ensuring schools and districts know when diagnostics and plans are due. Because of this, we cannot make changes to the due dates. It also emphasizes posting requirements. CDIPs and CSIPs must be publicly available on the district or school's website. The Kentucky Department of Education monitors compliance with federal and state requirements, but progress monitoring is the responsibility of districts and schools. Kentucky's planning process is designed to support both compliance and continuous improvement. These are not competing priorities, but they are intended to work together. The goal is to move beyond simply checking boxes. When planning is done intentionally, it reflects your vision for improvement, not just evidence that requirements were met. Implementation and effectiveness both matter. Schools and districts should actively monitor how well the plan is being carried out, whether it's making a difference. There's a section of the goal building template where this can be detailed. This is about building capacity, not just submitting documents. Strong planning leads to improved outcomes for students. The Continuous Improvement Platform is hosted by Cognia and is where all diagnostics are completed and submitted. To begin, select My Journey. You can see circled there on the screen. And this is the section of the platform where diagnostics live. If you're new to the platform or need a refresher, we recommend walking through the CIP user manual. This is also linked on our website. Kentucky's improvement planning process is organized into 4 phases, each with specific diagnostics and deadlines. The phases are aligned to the state regulation and are monitored by KDE for compliance. You can see the deadlines on your screen now, and these are similar deadlines to the past. Please note that progress monitoring of these diagnostics should be ongoing. These are living documents and can be updated throughout the school year. I'm now going to turn it over to Veronica to discuss some of the specifics of Phase 2 diagnostics.
Phase 2 occurs October 1st through November 1st. Due during Phase 2 is the School and District Needs Assessment, which allows schools and districts to use varied data points to determine their priorities and needs for the school year. The District Safety Report is also due at this time, as the district has gathered information from its schools to inform its own emergency plan. The district and school assurances ask principals and superintendents to assure that funding and federal program requirements are followed. New for this year is the District Trauma-Informed Approach Plan, which involves uploading a template that is linked in the slide here and is also available on the linked webpage where you can find more information on this diagnostic. There have been some updates to the needs assessment for both schools and districts. What you see here is a quick overview of those changes, but we'll take some time to look at each one in more detail. With the later release of the Kentucky Summative Assessment, data this year, schools and districts are encouraged to utilize local data to determine areas of strength and areas for improvement to complete and submit the diagnostic by the deadline. As living documents, diagnostics may be updated to reflect new information, changing circumstances, or evolving needs. Once KSA data is available, the needs assessment for districts and schools diagnostics may be revised in the continuous improvement platform as needed. The needs assessment is completed online using text boxes like the one you see here. For the first question, which focuses on the protocol for determining needs, you'll notice some guiding bullet points that are new this year. These help ensure your response includes key details, such as the stakeholders involved, the timeline of the process, the specific data that was analyzed, and how and when meetings for this work were documented. You'll notice the suggestion of some local and community groups that might be included on your team when determining this year's needs. This was intentional to really draw attention to the idea that improvement planning should be a collaborative effort. Next, there's a section asking you to review your previous plan. Here, you'll provide a brief summary of last year's plan and reflect on whether it was successful. You'll also explain how that reflection will shape and inform the development of this year's plan. The needs assessment also asks schools and districts to identify any academic, cultural, or behavioral trends that they've observed over the past 2 years. This question remains the same as last year. This step is important because it goes beyond just looking at isolated data points. It encourages you to step back and consider patterns, whether that's shifts in student achievement, changes in school culture, or recurring behavioral concerns. By looking at trends over time, schools and districts can make more informed decisions about priorities and strategies moving forward. Local and/or state data can be used here. This section has changed for this year. Instead of one combined section, it's now split into two, one on academics and one on climate and culture. For the academic narrative, you'll need to describe your school's current academic state using numbers and percentages from multiple sources, like the KSA, benchmark or formative assessments, graduation rates, or access to programs such as AP or dual credit. The key is to connect those numbers into a clear story about student performance. The second current state question focuses on climate and culture. Here, you'll highlight conditions like staff retention, absenteeism, behavior, mental health supports, or family engagement, again, using precise data to tell the story. This split gives schools the chance to separately capture academic outcomes and the conditions that support them, creating a clear picture overall. The next section of the needs assessment involves only a slight difference in how the questions are split up. Question 6 focuses on strengths. Schools and districts are asked to plainly state their strengths using precise numbers and percentages from current data. For example, you might note that your school has partnerships with 12 community organizations, or that 83% of certified staff have participated in high-quality professional learning. Notice there are specific numbers and percentages to identify these as strengths. The follow-up question, number 7, asks you to go a step further. How will you use those strengths and community assets to address areas for improvement? This could mean coordinating with community partners to support behavior needs or applying professional learning to develop targeted action plans. Together, these two questions help schools and districts not only name what they're doing well, but also show how those strengths can be leveraged to drive meaningful improvement. The final section of the needs assessment is where we evaluate the teaching and learning environment using the key core work processes, and it does involve a significant change for this year. In the past, schools completed the key core work process analysis on a separate document in a table format that was uploaded. Now it's all broken down in the platform, question by question. Here, schools and districts are asked to use implementation data, perception data, and current policies and practices to analyze the key elements of their teaching and learning environment. Based on that analysis, you'll select 2 or 3 key core work processes that will be your focus by marking yes or no on the diagnostic. For each process you select yes for, you'll also need to describe the specific processes, practices, or conditions that your school plans to improve. This structure makes it clear how your chosen priorities directly connect to your data and your improvement work. The linked text at the top of the diagnostic takes you to each key core work process definition page, which includes guiding questions to determine whether this is a quality practice in your school or district. The potential activities pages are also useful for this work. I'm going to pass it over to Trey now, who will break down each key core work process and get into some more detail on those potential activities for one of those as well.
As Veronica mentioned, you would choose a couple of key core work processes to focus on in the needs assessment. Key core work processes are evidence-based processes that you can center school improvement around. Key core work process 1 is design and deploy standards. This is ensuring that curriculum is intentionally aligned to the Kentucky academic standards, and it's a focus on coherence between standards, curriculum, and instructional resources. Key core work process number 2 is design and deliver instruction. This is where you plan and deliver instruction that is evidence-based and aligned to standards. Tier 1 instruction should be high quality and responsive to all learners. Key core work process number 3 is design and deliver assessment literacy. You may call this congruency. This is where you equip educators to use a balanced system of formative, interim, and summative assessments to inform instruction, and that staff focus on building staff capacity to interpret data accurately and use it to guide decision making. Key core work process 4 is reviewing, analyzing, and applying data results. This is the key core work process that establishes consistent systems for collecting and reviewing data to close achievement gaps. This also ensures leadership teams use data to drive instructional adjustments and monitor student growth. Key core work process 5 is design, align, and deliver support processes. This is aligning systems and resources to meet academic, behavioral, and social emotional needs of all students. And it's there to ensure interventions are data-driven for all students and monitored for effectiveness. The final key core work process, number 6, establishes learning culture and environment. This is about creating a safe, inclusive, and supportive environment that prioritizes learning and growth and fosters a positive school culture through collaboration between leadership, staff, and students. Our continuous improvement coaches have brainstormed example activities that support each of the key core work processes. These example activities are not meant to be copied and pasted into your diagnostics, as each school has very different needs and contexts, but they can serve as a jumping off point. So, looking back at key core work process number 1, design and deploy standards, some possible activities may be to refine a process for selecting high quality instructional resources that align to the Kentucky academic standards. Or another example of an activity is ensuring monitoring measures are in place to ensure the intended curriculum is being implemented with a high level of fidelity. This might be curriculum maps, pacing guides, lesson reviews, things like that. The key core work processes and these possible activities can all be found on our website under the Comprehensive Improvement Planning for Schools and Districts tab. I am now going to turn it over to Ruth to talk about the new CSIP and CDIP goal building templates.
So once you've identified your areas of need and the strengths that you can leverage to address them, you're ready for phase 3. This includes the superintendent gap assurance, which identifies any schools that have not met their achievement gap targets for the last 2 years. The CDIP and CSIP diagnostics are the star of this phase, and so we'll look at the significant differences to that goal building template and the rationale behind them. So it's important to remember that CDIPs and CSIPs are intended to be 3 to 5 year plans. So that means that you are not starting over each year, but what you are doing is considering any changing needs that you have, what has been implemented and been successful, and what needs to be maybe adapted, abandoned, or maybe newly adopted. The goal building templates look significantly different, but as we go through them, you'll see that all previous elements are still included. So this new format was designed to be streamlined, for one thing, designed to be accessible, and it's also designed to really encourage priorities. You'll notice that the format actually prints out on normal 8.5 by 11 paper now, which is a big plus for a lot of people. And the biggest content change is that there are 2 required areas to address, and then you are given the opportunity to use your needs assessment to determine which, if any, other indicators need to be a focus in your plan. So if reading and math and achievement gap, which are the required goal areas, if those are where your district or your school will be spending most of your time, energy, and resources, you may not add other goals. But if you are, let's say, a school identified for TSI for English learners, you may want to add the EL progress indicator as another goal area. Or let's say you are a high school and your needs assessment indicated that you are really struggling getting students post-secondary ready. So you would want to include that indicator as a priority goal area as well. Besides the goal building template, if you are a district that has schools identified for TSI, ATSI, or CSI, there is also an addendum that you are required to complete and upload. Now, this information used to be included at the bottom of the goal building template, but it's now a separate document. And for districts, both TSI and CSI are on the same addendum for your CDIP. And then, like the CDIP, schools that are identified for TSI, ATSI, or CSI also have addendums to complete and upload. But for the CSIP, there is a TSI, ATSI version and a separate CSI version. Another important thing to remember, especially with this format change, is that if you are a school that is implementing a Title I school-wide program, this CSIP serves as your school-wide plan. So because of that, it must include the strategies and activities that are funded with Title I. So for example, if Title I supports activities to address quality of school climate and culture, that would need to be included as an optional goal area in your plan so that you are able to show how those funds are utilized. So I'll turn it over to Veronica now to look more closely at those updated goal building templates.
So the next 2 slides provide the definitions that are also listed at the top of the CSIP or CDIP template. We will dig into each of these further in the following slides. Here are a few more definitions that are also included in that top section of the CSIP or CDIP. Let's take a look at how the template looks for some of these sections. This is an example of the document for one of the required goals, state assessment results in reading and mathematics. You can see that under each section, there's an area to type your response. You may have more than one item to list in each section. For example, there may be several activities that you list. Once the required goals are completed, you will use the needs assessment data to complete any of the optional goal indicator sections. You will use the drop-down options here to indicate whether it is a priority indicator by selecting yes or no. For any indicator noted as a priority with a yes, schools must complete the below fields. For any indicator marked with a no, no further information is needed. This gives more detail surrounding what is meant by goal versus objective. Each indicator starts with a goal, which then gets broken down into smaller objectives. One common point of confusion when completing the CSIP or CDIP is distinguishing between goal and objective statements. The goal statement outlines a long-term target, typically spanning 3 to 5 years. You will notice that the goals section requires specific state assessment data for each indicator. Objectives are the smaller, short-term targets that focus on what can be achieved within the current academic school year. Think of them as steps taken this year to help move toward the larger, long-term goal. Objectives should be directly linked to state assessment results or aligned formative assessments. The high-quality bullets here refer to achieving the highest score on our rubrics, and I'll discuss those a little later on. This slide provides examples for a goal and its corresponding objectives. You can see that the goal is overarching for the Reading and Math KSA indicator using the PD score for a 3 to 5 year goal. Then each subject is broken down with a mini goal, aka the objective for the school year. I'm going to hand it back over to Trey to continue our walkthrough of the sections of the CSIP and CDIP.
In the CSIP or NCDIP, a strategy is the overarching approach your school or district would take to address a priority need identified in the needs assessment. There could be multiple strategies for each objective statement. Each strategy should describe what would be done differently to meet the objective and ultimately achieve the goal. You can see that for a strategy to be high quality, it should be explicit and note how it would lead to change instead of just stating the strategy. Strategy should be connected to a key core work process that we previously discussed, or another established improvement frameworks like Shipley, Baldrige, or Six Sigma. Each strategy must be specific and aligned to the identified need from the needs assessment, and it should not be generic or vague. Continuing or looking at an instructional resources need for under key core work process 2, you can see that our example includes the strategy of developing a school-wide instructional process. However, it doesn't stop there. Since we wanted to qualify for high quality, we mentioned that this would lead to congruency with standards and that it would boost achievement. As you draft your own strategies, think, is this clearly aligned to our needs assessment? Is it specific enough to guide action? And will it lead to the improvement that we're targeting? Activities are the specific actionable steps that your school or district would take in order to implement the strategy. They should clearly describe what staff would do differently to improve the targeted process, practice, or condition. One thing to note is that if you're involved in developing the CDIP, it's important to remember that activities should describe the steps the district would take, not what the schools are implementing. Each activity should be intentionally aligned to the strategy and logical scaffold to help achieve the objective. High quality activities include details such as what the action is, its purpose, when and how often it will occur, and whose it's for. Activities should be practical, measurable, and feasible within your school or district's context. And you should think, do our activities move the work forward? And are they specific enough to guide implementation and monitoring? Here is another example of it for the activity stage. Note that these activities are smaller, actionable steps to achieve the strategy of implementing instructional resources with fidelity, and they build on each other in intentional ways and provide the scaffolding. One thing we might want to do to get these to the high quality planning stage is to add when and how often the action will occur and the audience or the recipient of the action. Progress monitoring should occur on a clear timeline with specific individuals responsible for reviewing the data. Progress monitoring should be about both tracking implementation and impact, not just whether something was done, but whether it's working. Progress monitoring should involve more than one person. Best practice is to distribute responsibility across leadership, instructional staff, and support teams. Don't limit monitoring to student achievement data. You can include implementation data, surveys, observations, walkthroughs, and PLC discussions. The previous measures of success has been incorporated into the progress monitoring section. Continue on with the example of implementing curriculum with fidelity. This example on the slide shows how monitoring is distributed across roles. The admin team and instructional coach conduct weekly instructional walks, while PLCs review assessment data bi-weekly. This kind of structure ensures that monitoring is ongoing and actionable, not just a one-time check at the end of the school year. High-quality plans include varied data sources and frequent review cycles. This allows for timely adjustments and supports continuous improvement. When assigning responsibilities, avoid concentrating tasks around just one or two people. Spread ownership to build capacity and ensure sustainability. For each activity in your plan, you should list the specific funding source, whether that is local, state, or federal money. If your school receives Title I Part A funds, the CSIP must show how those funds support the planned activities. It's important to be clear and consistent. This section ensures transparency and alignment between your plan and your budget. High-quality funding documentation includes specific sources, estimated amounts, and clear connections to the activities being supported. In this example, activities are matched with either a dollar amount or a note that says no funding is needed. For instance, professional development is supported by a school improvement fund grant with a named consultant and cost, while administrative tasks are marked 0 from the general fund. This approach shows intentional planning and that it's aligned to work and reflects actual resources that are needed. I'm now going to turn it back over to Veronica.
All right. Once you have your plan completed, it needs to be uploaded in the Continuous Improvement Platform, or the CIP. Once you are in the diagnostic, you will see an option to upload an attachment. Make sure you do this in the area under 1A, as it is shown above. Uploading only at the bottom where other attachments can be uploaded will lead the system to marking it as incomplete. I know that we've given a lot of information pertaining to the plans and how they should be completed. To assist you in checking your work alongside expectations, we have rubrics that can be used. If you're one of our lucky schools or districts chosen for CSIP or CDIP review, you'll get a scored rubric back from one of our consultants. Each plan must score in the meets expectations or high quality planning areas to be approved. During the review process, we provide feedback and revisions are required until those scores are met. As Ruth mentioned earlier, schools that are identified for TSI, ATSI, or CSI must complete additional addendums that are located at the link above. For any district with a TSI, ATSI, and/or a CSI school, they must also complete an addendum on their plans. Districts must also provide information on the intensive supports provided to their federally identified schools. These will also need to be uploaded in the CIP. The final phase for the CSIP and CDIP is shown here. Note that progress monitoring is not a separate diagnostic in the platform, but serves as a reminder in the timeline to monitor the progress of your plans. The deadline for submission of the CSIP or CDIP is January 1st, and the main work of writing that plan usually takes place in the fall, but it's important to keep a pulse check on your plan. The district has several diagnostics they must complete in this phase listed here, including the PD plan that schools are also responsible for. Although the phase window is through the end of the calendar year, these diagnostics are due on May 1st. Trey's up next for some tips with navigating the continuous improvement platform.
Here you can see a screenshot showing you how to start a new diagnostic. To begin a new diagnostic in the continuous improvement platform, click the New Diagnostic button in the top right menu where that arrow is pointed. Then select Browse Content Library to choose the appropriate diagnostic type for your school or district. When starting a diagnostic, make sure to select the correct type. Choose Schools for school-level diagnostics and Systems for district-level diagnostics. You'll also want to make sure that you have clicked the Kentucky Department of Education tab instead of the certified content. Diagnostics have 3 statuses: not started, in progress, and complete. You'll see these as different circle icons. To be marked complete, every question must be answered and required attachments must be uploaded in the correct locations. Locking the diagnostic is optional as it prevents edits but isn't required for submission. Veronica will now talk about some of the most common issues.
We're always going for the complete circle with a check mark. Let's look at some situations that can cause confusion. Sometimes schools or districts accidentally put their diagnostics under the incorrect institution name. This is very common with districts and schools named very similarly. There's also some room for error when selecting a diagnostic as the titles are very similar. As Trey was mentioning, make sure to choose schools or systems if you're the district, dependent on which level you're working with. The CIP is very picky about where the attachments are uploaded for it to be marked complete. There are options to upload more files at the bottom, but it will not mark the diagnostic as complete unless you have something in the specific area where it details for you to upload, as you see the circle above. Many institutions end up attaching their documents multiple places, and just to be sure. I know I've gone over this a couple of times already, but again, the placement of that attachment is very important to get that marked completion status. So if you just put it at the bottom, it will not mark it as complete. Another issue is blank answers. To complete your diagnostic, each question has to have a response, even if you record not applicable. Some diagnostics may have many multiple choice questions and one can easily be missed, so that's something else to look out for. The diagnostics from past years can sometimes cause slow loading and difficulty when finding specific diagnostics. This slide shows you how to search. 2 previous years of diagnostics are saved for each institution. If you find it difficult to find what you need, here are some helpful tips. Always scroll all the way down first to ensure that everything has loaded. You'll see the spinning wheel eventually stop. You can also use the last modified or date drop-down sorting options to locate the most recent diagnostics. There's also a magnifying glass that you can use to search. Searching the school year is a good way to find what you're looking for. Trey's going to wrap things up for us now.
To wrap things up, we wanted to give you the contact information for the best person to reach regarding the content in each diagnostic. We are happy to help with all the remaining diagnostics, and we can also help you with any problem submitting diagnostics. If you have any questions regarding the comprehensive improvement process throughout the school year, our email addresses are on the screen. We are always happy to assist. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this webinar. Please let us know if you have any further questions.